Well, hello, and thank you very much for clicking on this video today. So today, we are doing a video about a report which is kind of floating through the Church of England, and this is about the persecution that the Palestinian people, both Muslim Palestinians and Christian Palestinians, face from Israel. And this is leading to potentially something of a row between the Church of England and the many Zionist organisations that exist in the UK and internationally that claim to speak for Jewish folk, where in fact they really don't. But anyway, so this particular document is called Kyrios Palestine, the Palestinian Christian Initiative. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the document, which outlines the persecution that they are facing and the genocide that they are facing, outlines it very well, and then we'll go to the kind of moral outrage that the various usual Zionist suspects have displayed at this very sensible and reasonable report. So, Kyrios Palestine, the Palestinian Christian Initiative, a moment of true faith in a time of genocide. So it starts with a quote from Psalms, and it says, We look toward the day when we shall live free in our land, together with all inhabitants of the earth, in true peace and reconciliation, founded upon the justice and equality of God's creation, where mercy and truth meet, and righteousness and peace kiss each other. So here's the introduction. So we, the Palestinian Christian Economical Initiative, issued the Kyrios Palestine document in 2009, a word of faith, hope and love from the heart of Palestinian suffering. The heads of the churches in Jerusalem heard this cry, welcomed it and offered their support. Likewise, the document resonated widely, both locally and internationally. Then as now, we gathered women and men, clergy and laity from across different church families in Palestine, after prayer and reflection on the suffering of our people under occupation. We released that cry of hope in the absence of hope, affirming our faith in God and our love of our homeland, convinced that our struggle is ultimately about human life and dignity. It then goes on to say, we live now in a time of genocide, ethnic cleansing and forced displacement unfolding before the eyes of the world. This moment demands from us a new stand. One unlike any before it, it is both a decisive moment and a moment of truth. Today we renew our stand for truth and our commitment to fundamental religious, theological and moral principles. We look at our reality and take a renewed stand, responding to the voice of the Holy Spirit deep within us, listening to the call of our faith in this time of genocide. We renew our message, faith, hope and love, offering a faith-inspired vision of the time after genocide. So that was introduction, so we go into part one. So, the reality, genocide, colonization, ethnic cleansing. We raise this cry from the heart of the assault on Gaza. A war has left many hundreds of thousands of martyrs and wounded, and nearly 2 million displaced people. Many were buried beneath the rubble, burned alive, or tortured to death in prisons, or forcibly displaced more than once. Others endured starvation, targeted even as they ran in search for food. Tens of thousands of children were killed in the most horrific ways. Gaza's health, education, economic and environmental sectors, indeed every component in life, has been destroyed. It will take years to recover from the devastation and catastrophe that have befallen us as a people. It then goes on to say, human rights organizations, legal institutions, international experts have been unequivocal. The statements of Israeli political leaders and Israeli actions in its assault on Gaza constitute genocide. Many of the war crimes and crimes committed against humanity have been documented, and arrest warrants have been issued against Israeli political leaders based upon the rulings of the International Court of Justice. They do not want us to remain on our land, but are destined for displacement, death or submission. The genocidal war on Gaza is the continuation of the Zionist project to seize all of Palestine, empty it of its Palestinian people, ethnic cleansing, and the denial of the right to return for those who have been forcibly displaced are ongoing policies practiced in Jerusalem, the West Bank and Gaza, and the territories of 1948. The Nakba of our people is a daily reality. This genocide has been carried out by Israel after decades of apartheid, settler colonialism, political repression, and the deliberate policy of killing any possibility of a political solution, including the two-state solution. Exposed today is the true face of Zionist ideology, a system that over decades has entrenched an organized and sophisticated regime of apartheid, supported by advanced technologies exercising total control over every aspect of Palestinian life, fragmenting the land, dividing its people, and turning Palestinian existence into an unbearable hell. Israel's so-called nation-state law enacted in 2018 embodies Zionist racism and arrogant Jewish supremacy in Palestine, making apartheid a lived reality. Israel's decision to annex the West Bank has further exposed the true extent of its colonial project. It then continues, while the peoples of the world are stood in solidarity with us, the genocidal war has laid bare the hypocrisy of the Western world, its hollow values, and the civilization it boasts, claiming commitment to human rights and international law. In truth, the Western world has sacrificed us, revealing racism and double standards towards our people. Of course, we distinguish between the architects of these destructive policies and the many leaders, organizations, and popular movements that have shown sincere solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza, demanding an end to injustice and bloodshed and full recognition of our legitimate rights. This war has also exposed another reality of Zionism, whether Jewish or Christian. In its justification of violence and killing, we Palestinian Christians are deeply shocked by the positions of many churches that have either adopted the colonizers' narrative or remained silent in the face of the genocide of our people. At times, they prioritize Jewish-Christian interfaith dialogue over truth, human dignity, and life itself, ignoring the context. They judge one side and excuse the other, or simply remain silent. Some even go so far to take positions complicit in, supportive of, or calling for genocide. Israel commits these crimes while invoking the events of October the 7th, 2023. Claiming that its actions are an act of self-defense, forgetting that the Hamas attack of that day was itself born out of decades of injustice, oppression, and displacement since the Nakba of 1948, and more than 16 years of immoral, suffocating blockade on Gaza. To refer to this context and to the right of the people under occupation to resist their occupier and oppressor, it is acknowledged that the events of October 7th occurred in a particular context. Mentioning the context does not justify the killing or capture of civilians, the violations of international law and norms, or war crimes. At the same time, the claim of self-defense cannot stand. How can a colonizer defend itself against those it has colonized and expelled from their land? International law, if it still retains any moral weight, refutes this claim. And on a more basic level, if you attack a people, dispossess them, strip them of their rights and their lands, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to retaliate, and retaliate in any desperate way that they can. So, we move on to settler colonialism. Past and present is built upon genocide, ethnic cleansing, and the forced displacement of indigenous peoples, all for the sake of exploiting land, resources, and wealth to serve the colonizers' gain. We see deep economic dimension behind Israel's genocidal war on Gaza, particularly its interest in the natural gas fields off the Palestinian coast. Control over Gaza also means control over one of the world's most vital trade routes and energy supply corridors, enabling vast economic and commercial prospects that entrench colonial economic dominance at the expense of the Palestinian people. The world's silence towards the genocide in Gaza is not innocent. It is tied to massive economic interests that value profit above human life and rights. In Jerusalem, clear settler colonial policies of religious and demographic nature seek to Judaicize the city at the expense of its pluralism. There are continuous assaults on Muslim and Christian holy sites, attempts to burn churches, desecrate and destroy cemeteries, and the writing of racist graffiti slogans upon them. Attacks on Christian clergy are increasing, as are restrictions on Christian religious celebrations such as the Holy Fire Saturday and Palm Sunday, financial coercion through the imposition of taxes and the freezing of church bank accounts, in violation of the status quo, has also intensified. The heads of the churches in Jerusalem have described these acts as part of a systematic policy to empty the Holy Land of its Christians. So, across the occupied West Bank from north to south, Palestinian towns, villages, and Bedouin communities face relentless assaults by settlers and settlements. They wreak havoc upon the land, destroy crops, poison or seize water resources, and attack residents, all under the protection, support, and even participation of the Israeli army in acts of violence, killing, home demolitions, and forced displacement. Palestinian society lives under a suffocating siege imposed by checkpoints, gates, and every mechanism that denies our people freedom of movement. For the Palestinians within the state of Israel, blatant racism and discrimination persist. Palestinian communities face intimidation, criminalization of free expression, and persecution of any effort to defend Palestinian rights, along with deliberate neglect of rampant organized crime in Palestinian towns. Those displaced within Israel in 1948, whose lands were confiscated, are still denied the right to return to their villages and rebuild their homes. Bedouin communities remain victims of systematic displacement and ethnic cleansing, especially in Nakab, I believe that's pronounced. In recent years, Israel, supported by the United States and other major powers, such as the UK, where I'm from, has constantly attacked the core principles and legitimate rights of the Palestinian people. It has sought to erase the refugee question by attempting to destroy the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East, accusing it of terrorism and pressuring donor countries to cut its funding. At the same time, several refugee camps in the West Bank have been systematically destroyed, displacing thousands of people once again. Palestinian civil society organizations working in the fields of human rights have come under fierce assault aimed at discrediting them, undermining their work, and even eliminating them through accusations of terrorism and through political pressure on governments to halt their funding and prosecute them. Since 7th October 2023, Israel has dramatically expanded its policy of abduction and imprisonment. Today, thousands of Palestinians, male and female alike, are being held in Israeli prisons. Roughly one-third are detained without charge or trial under administrative detention. Among them are many children. Numerous deaths have been recorded in prisons since the war began. Human rights organizations have documented systematic practices of torture, sexual violence, starvation policies, and the denial of basic medical care. Prisoners, especially those from Gaza, are subjected to mass detention and complete isolation from the outside world under Israeli military law, resulting in large numbers of enforced disappearances, loss of legal representation, and total absence of communication. So it goes on to say, the internal Palestinian situation is in urgent need of reorganization. Political division, rivalry, and exclusion have deepened. The majority of Palestinians have lost confidence in their political leadership. As a result of the Oslo Accords and their aftermath, the Palestinian Authority has been trapped in serving the interests of the occupier, managing the daily life of the occupied on the behalf of the Israeli occupier, unable to protect its own people from the terror of settlers and Israeli security apparatus. Signs of disorder have already begun to spread within Palestinian society and have become part of our reality, largely due to the absence or weak enforcement of the rule of law. This has led to a rise in intimidation, land encroachment, tribalism, favoritism, and corruption in various forms at the expense of the common good, deepening people's frustration and despair. Amid the vast destruction and genocide in Gaza, acts of violence, revenge, chaos, and theft have only added to the suffering of the Palestinian people. Daily life for Palestinians under military occupation has become consumed by internal concerns. checkpoints, travel restrictions at borders and crossings, the payment of public sector salaries, and many other pressing issues. Significant as they are, they remain symptoms of a larger reality, which must remain the central focus of our attention: the system of political and military domination imposed by Israel as an occupying entity over the Palestinian people. Our society and political culture suffer from the absence of leadership renewal and vision through democratic elections, as well as the exclusion of young leaders. Palestine today faces a grave phenomenon of brain drain, including skilled professionals and the young. This is not voluntary emigration, this is forced displacement, born of oppression and the complete lack of opportunity. We affirm that Palestinians of all faiths, that we are the indigenous people of this land, and that our very existence today faces an unprecedented threat. The continuous emigration of Christians does not stop, constituting a real danger that the Christian presence in Palestine, which is now at risk of ethnic cleansing and extinction. Christians in Palestine and the diaspora are inseparable part of the Palestinian people. Their challenges are the challenges of a nation as a whole. The reality of the church is directly affected by everything that happens on the ground. The church continues to work tirelessly through pastoral care and institutional ministry to support its sons, daughters, and the broader society in facing these pressures. The heads of the churches work together to confront the repeated assaults, issuing statements and taking courageous positions, despite the pressures and intimidation they face, in the hope that the world and the global church will listen. At the same time, some Palestinian Christians feel a growing need for greater closeness between the clergy and laity, and for the stronger role of leadership of the church in rejecting occupation and its symbols, elevating local theology and giving it broader expression in church pulpits and public stances. In recent years, our region, the Middle East, has undergone major political and regional transformations, shaped by a deliberate plan to impose Israeli military dominance over an entire area with the support of Western powers, drawing a new political and demographic map in our region. Israel, backed systematically by its allies, has attacked many countries of the region, violating their sovereignty and that of its peoples, flouting international law and entrenching itself as an aggressive, bullying state above all laws and conventions, pushing the region and indeed the world to the brink of catastrophe. As a result of these external interventions and struggles for dominance, extremist and terrorist religious groups have emerged, groups we condemn, along with those who have supported, financed, or armed them. These movements have entrenched sectarianism at the expense of citizenship. Many minorities, including Middle East Christians, especially in Syria and Iraq, have paid a painful price for this extremism. In solidarity and prayer, we stand beside them, all victims of sectarianism and religious terrorism. At the same time, normalization agreements have been marked as peace agreements between Israeli and some Arab states under the name Abraham Accords. This naming itself represents the manipulation of religion to serve political, economic, and normalization agendas, ignoring the essence of the issue and the priority of achieving a just peace with the Palestinians themselves. These accords have instead normalized occupation and apartheid in Palestine, rendering them acceptable, normal realities. A new phenomenon has also emerged: Zionist Islam, a recent movement along certain Arabs and Muslims who, for religious, economic, or geopolitical reasons, support Zionism and regard Israel as a potential ally. In light of all of this, we must call things by their proper names. Israel is a colonial, settler, and exclusionary entity, built upon the displacements of indigenous population and their replacement with new settlers. For this reason, we reject the very concept of conflict. The reality on the ground is rather tyranny. As an oppressive regime of settler colonialism and apartheid, any denial of this reality is an evasion of manifest truth, one that reinforces and perpetuates the injustice. We are now living in a new era, an age in which might makes right, and peace is imposed through military power in defiance of international law and rulings of legitimate international courts. We reaffirm our commitment to respect the authority of international law, which guarantees human rights and global peace amongst nations and peoples. This moment in human history demands a faith-based stance, one that speaks truth to power and tyranny without compromise or evasion. This goes beyond any particular Palestinian dimension, it is truly, as they put it here, a moment of truth. So, this document then goes on to say, part 2, a moment of truth for us. In the face of the harsh reality and its decisive moment, we raise this cry, first for ourselves, to the sons and daughters of our churches and congregations, and to our entire people in the homeland and diaspora. It is a cry of steadfastness, a renewed stand for truth, and a call to hear the voice of God within us and to us. It is a time for solidarity and mutual support, a time to take clear and courageous positions built upon the principles of faith and a national belonging. This is the moment of truth. We affirm that what has been built upon by falsehoods and historical injustice can never yield peace or sustainability. True solutions begin with dismantling oppressive, racist systems. Only then can we speak of a new horizon that we dream of and long for, one which we remain in our land together with all who dwell in it on the basis of justice, equality, and equal rights, free from supremacy and domination. We call for a comprehensive national re-evaluation of our reality to draw lessons and insights from it, leading to an unaffirmed collective vision and clear strategy for future action grounded on independence of Palestinian decision-making. This must include a critical review of all proposed solutions and their feasibility within a legitimate representative framework that ensures independence of decision-making and the right to self-determination. We warn against giving our national struggle a religious character or turning it into a religious issue that pits religions against one another. This is a time for resistance embodied in costly steadfastness of our land in the face of every attempt of displacement, annexation, and genocide. A resistance lived out in our unity, cooperation, and commitment to our faith, national principles, and all of our rights. To hold on to faith and hope is resistance. To pray is resistance. To safeguard holy places is resistance. To preserve social peace is resistance. At a time when Palestinian resistance and global solidarity movements are criminalized, I've talked quite a bit about that, we reaffirm the right of all colonized people to resist their colonizers. As we stand in our first document, we remain committed to the principle of creative resistance, a firm and costly stand against ongoing injustice. We see creative resistance embodied in the popular Palestinian movements confronting occupation, settlement expansion, settler terrorism, and apartheid, as well as in the work of civil society organizations, legal and human rights initiative, cultural, theological, and diplomatic engagement, and in student and labor movements. In all these and more, we recognize the effective means of resistance grounded in love, a love that can bring about change and renew hope. It then goes on to say, we value global movements of resistance, advocacy, and popular pressure that work to hold governments and international bodies accountable. Isolating Israel through boycotts and sanctions until it complies with international law, we view this from a moral perspective. Strategies of boycotts, divestments, and sanctions are, in our view, effective forms of creative resistance, rooted in logic of love and non-violence as affirmed in our original document. In the face of ecocide perpetuated by Israel in Gaza and the repeated assaults and environmental destruction in the West Bank that threaten future generations, we renew our belonging to this land and our rootedness in it. We affirm that the sanctity of life and the duty of care for creation. Our calling is to live in mutual coexistence with creation, a shared faith, and moral responsibility embraced by individuals and institutions, public, governmental, social, and religious alike. We emphasize the urgent need to protect all those who are vulnerable in society, the victims of occupation and colonization, people with disabilities, especially those who have lost limbs, the broken-hearted, and the grieving, and all who are marginalized for any reason, including victims of domestic, social violence, economic exploitation, or gender-based abuse. Among the faces of steadfastness and hope in our society stands the Palestinian woman, grandmother, mother, sister, and daughter, the unbending backbone, partner in the struggle, holding together home, land, memory, and future all at once. Her presence is the foundation is foundational to society as a whole, and her contributions are manifold in national, social, economic, and spiritual life. The Palestinian woman cannot be reduced to the category of women and children, faceless victims stripped of all agency and will. Her voice, creativity, and leadership are indispensable forces. There cannot be true liberation without her full participation at every level of decision-making and nation-building. Our message to ourselves as Palestinian Christians is this: we feel the weight of history upon our shoulders, and we're determined to preserve the Christian witness in this Holy Land. To all Palestinians, we say the preservation of the Christian presence is both a national cause and a priority. We are neither simply a number nor merely a type of diversity within our society. We are indigenous citizens who embody human values and seek to work and build our homeland alongside all our partners in it. In addressing ourselves, we say we are sons and daughters of the first church, descendants of the apostles and the saints of the first Christian centuries, those who cultivated this land, built its cities and villages, and drank from its waters. We do not live on the margins of this land. We are woven into its fabric. We carry its history and heritage. Its very soil knows us as its own. Many empires have passed over this land and disappeared, buried in the dust of history. Yet the bells of our churches continue to ring, bearing witness to the truth and proclaiming resurrection every day. It then goes on to say, this is what we say to our young men and women. You are the living church. You are the treasure of hope. The future is born from your steadfastness and your faith. We believe in you. We see your anger, your sorrow, your fear. We also see your strength. We know that our story has not ended and that our injustice persists. We do not call you to naive optimism, but to the hope that is rooted in action. Hope is not surrender. Hope is a living act of resistance, steadfastly refusing the reality of death imposed upon us, confronting and resisting every form of injustice and occupation. Jesus Christ walked with the poor and the weak, stood beside the oppressed, and never abandoned love or compromised truth and justice. For the sake of salvation of humanity, he accepted the cross. His resurrection was a victory over death and injustice, a sign of hope rooted in faith. This is the hope that sustains us today. And we also say and we say to you also, you are not alone. There are those who stand with you in Palestine and around the world. Even if silence prevails now, the day will come when your voices will be heard. Your voices matter. Express yourself. Write, sing, create, organize, resist through your humanity in a world that seeks to strip it from you. Dare to love, to dream, and to shape a free and radiant future. We salute your initiatives and your activities in the church, in national civic engagement, in scouting, youth, sports, culture, art, politics, and human rights, all marked by openness to society, by the spirit of volunteerism, and by faith and hope, free of sectarianism. We draw inspiration from your steadfastness and your love, and we see you in the promise of a better future. To our people in the diaspora, those who were forcibly displaced, you may be geographically far from Palestine, but Palestine lives within you. We call upon you to engage in communities, movements, and coalitions aimed to strengthen our steadfastness and affirm our presence. You play an essential role. Your voice has the power to shift realities. We value your activism. We have heard your voices. Indeed, the whole world has heard them. Share our suffering and our stories of steadfastness and success. Create spaces for dialogue and for building bridges between us and the religious and the political leaders in the countries of your diaspora. Act with wisdom and present to the world the true image of our people. In you also lies the hope for a better future. We will not lose our dream of reunification, nor will abandon our right of return. It goes on to say, we extend our support to our spiritual leaders and church institutions that continue to bear the Christian witness even in the darkest and most difficult of times, strengthening the steadfastness of their sons and daughters. We especially commend the tremendous work of the churches of Gaza who have sheltered the displaced. We value the courage of our church leaders who have stood with our people in Gaza and supported their steadfastness amid genocide and displacement. The faithful in Gaza have written many heroic stories of steadfastness and witness. Some have been martyred, many have been wounded and bereaved. Our prayers and hearts are with them. We call upon Christians around the world to stand with us in our efforts, contrary to what appearances may suggest, to preserve the Christian presence in Gaza, which dates back to the earliest centuries of Christianity, and to advocate for the right of all who were displaced to return to their homes and rebuild their lives. So witness and resurrection. So we are the witness to the resurrection and to the empty tomb from which the light of life burst forth. We believe the final word belongs not in death, but to life, not to darkness, but to light, not to injustice, but to truth. We proclaim with the Apostle Paul, we are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. So, part 3, a call to repentance and action. We addressed our appeal to Christians around the world. We addressed this call from Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Nazareth, from the birthplace of Christ, the land of the incarnation of the world, and the cradle of love, mercy, and justice, from the land of suffering, death, and resurrection, the land of redemption and hope, from where humanity is called to repentance and the return to the foundations of faith have come from. From here the faith spreads to the ends of the earth. It is a call to learn to do good, to seek justice, and rescue the oppressed. The God revealed to us in Holy Scriptures in both Old and New Testaments, the Creator of the universe and to all humanity. There is one who is incarnate, the Son Jesus Christ, the God of all peoples, the God, the Creator, the Father of all, stands in solidarity and takes the side of the oppressed and the downtrodden and the victims of all forms of injustice and tyranny from every nation, regardless of race, religion, or nationality. The mission of the Church is thus made manifest in joining the work of God's kingdom through the pursuit of peace, the defense of the oppressed, and for doing of good. Genocide is a cumulative process, one that begins in the minds of the settler colonial powers of Europe when they denied the image of God in others and legitimized death, domination, and slavery. We consider the State of Israel, established in 1948, to be a continuation of the same colonial enterprise built on racism and the ideology of ethnic or religious superiority. This project settled Palestine and worked to displace the indigenous people of Palestine from the time of Nakba until today. Our present Palestinian reality is the inevitable outcome of Zionist ideology and the supremacist settler colonial movement, itself a product of the imperial mindset. Genocide is a structural sin against God, against humanity, against creation. It stands in direct opposition to the great commandment of love, the summary of the whole law. Those who deny the genocide committed against the Palestinian people in Gaza, despite the overwhelming evidence, testimonies, and even statements of the Zionists themselves, deny the Christian fellowship or communion while dying, supporting, justifying, or remaining silent before genocide. Especially when such acts are committed in the name of God and Scripture, there must be honest reflection and repentance by all believers, especially by the church leaders throughout the world. We express our gratitude to churches that have recognized the injustice inflicted upon us and the genocidal war in Gaza. We salute all the voices that have taken a religious and moral stand against Zionism and so-called Christian Zionism, rejecting genocide and apartheid and calling for an end to arms shipments to Israel and for the prosecution of war criminals. We hear in these voices support of our hope, a sign of the Holy Spirit and the presence of moral conscience in humanity. We call for a global theological movement built on the pillars of God's kingdom, one that arises from the context and struggles of people suffering from colonialism, racism, apartheid, and structural poverty produced by a corrupt economic and political system that serves the interests of the world's empires. We challenge the false logic of neutral or balanced peace, as well as the forms of ecclesial, I think that is pronounced, diplomacy that do not speak truth to power as a way of evading moral and spiritual responsibility. Together with our partners around the world, we have engaged in self-examination to free ourselves from the residues of colonial theologies which we inherited from the West. We reject oppression and injustice produced by the theology of racism, colonialism, and ethnic supremacy embodied in Christian Zionism, a theology that has produced apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and genocide of indigenous people. Christian Zionism calls on a tribal, racist God, a war and ethnic cleansing, teaching utterly alien to the core of Christian faith and ethics. Christian Zionism, therefore be named for what it is, a theological and moral corruption. After all the efforts to invite Christian Zionists to genuine repentance have been exhausted, moral, ecclesial, and theological responsibility requires that they must be held accountable, and that their theology must be rejected and boycotted. The time has come for churches across the world to repudiate Zionist theology, and to state clearly their position on Palestine. This is a case of settler colonialism and ethnic cleansing of an indigenous people. We condemn all those who exploit and support the charge of anti-Semitism to silence Palestinian voice of truth. We reject every attempt to conflate anti-Semitism with opposition to apartheid, and with pressure to hold Israel accountable under international law, particularly through the use of definitions and documents designed to serve Zionist ideologies and interests under the guise of combating anti-Semitism. The misuse of the term anti-Semitism distorts and obscures the reality of genuine anti-Semitism, which exists in our world, which we strongly condemn, alongside all forms of racism, exclusion, and prejudice, including Islamophobia. Zionist ideology claims to represent the protected Jewish people, but in so doing so, they have conflated Jew and Zionist as though they were one and the same. Not every Jew is a Zionist, and not every Zionist is a Jew. This confusion has done great harm to Judaism itself and its image worldwide. We call upon the people of conscience, believers in God from every faith and persons of every conviction, to join together in coalitions that safeguard humanity from a further descent into the reality of injustice, tyranny, and domination. We call for the creation of an alternative, just and humane world order, as the present global system has failed in its most important responsibilities to defend the weak and preserve international peace and security. We repeat and emphasize our appeal to the churches of the world, working together in both religious and secular coalitions to pressure their governments to isolate Israel, to hold it accountable, impose sanctions, boycott it, and to ban the export of arms until it complies with international law, ends the oppression and tyranny, and adheres to the principles of justice and peace. We likewise call upon the governments of the world to press for the prosecution of war criminals, whoever they may be, under the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court, to ensure reparations for the Palestinian people, both in their homeland and in the diaspora, and to work for the immediate return of the displaced through the reconstruction of Gaza and the strengthening of its people's steadfastness. More than ever, now is a time for costly solidarity. By its very nature, solidarity is costly. It has a price. It is a faith-based stand, a human commitment, and a moral responsibility. True solidarity is also the embodiment of our shared humanity and fraternity. Either we live together or we perish together. Today it is Palestine. Tomorrow it will be another marginalized or oppressed peoples. In this spirit, we honor the growing number of Jewish voices that oppose the war and confront Zionism from a moral, faith-based and human conviction. In them we find partners in our shared humanity and in the struggle for freedom and human dignity. Partners also in religious and political dialogue. For too many years, such dialogue was monopolized by Zionists and their allies, its premises built upon the reinforcement of Zionist ideology and the persecution of Palestinians. We therefore call on the churches of the world to distinguish between dialogue with Jews and dialogue with Zionism. Indeed, to boycott dialogue with Zionist voices that have supported and continue to support occupation, apartheid, and genocide of the Palestinian people. Instead, we call upon the churches to stand with and amplify prophetic Jewish voices that call for justice and truth. Christian solidarity means standing beside and supporting the local church in its steadfastness, strengthening the steadfastness of believers in the land, and empowering church and Christian institutions that embody the faith-based and humanitarian missions on the ground. Today we renew our appeal to Christians worldwide to challenge the siege imposed on the Christians of the Holy Land, to come to come and visit the living stones, to witness and respond to what you see, and to strengthen the steadfastness of Palestinians and the Christian Palestinians among them. This is our call. Come and see. Then tell what you have seen, respond to it, and stand steadfast with the church. So, we're nearing the end. So the next part is faith in time of genocide. From the land of the... I'm really bad at reading. From the land of the incarnation, the cross and the resurrection, we renew our word of hope in the God of the poor, the oppressed, and the downtrodden. The genocidal war has sought to strip us of our hope and faith in God's goodness and in life upon our lands. Yet we declare our adherence to our faith in a holy and just God, and in the right God has given us to live with our dignity and our land and the land of our ancestors. This is our hope. This is our steadfastness. This is our resistance. We have heard much talk of political solutions and peace, while the reality on the ground says otherwise. To speak of a political solution today is futile unless we undertake the serious work of acknowledging and rectifying past wrongs, beginning with the recognition of the historic injustice done to Palestinians since the rise of the Zionist movement and the Balfour Declaration. Any genuine beginning must involve dismantling settler colonialism and the apartheid system built on Jewish supremacy, as codified in Israel's racist nation-state law. We also reject proposals for a weakened conditional state, lacking full sovereignty over its borders, waters, airspace, and security. What is required is international action and protection, accountability of war criminals, and compensation for survivors of genocide, the Nakba, and settler colonialism, enduring solutions that will not rest on logic or force, but on the foundations of justice, equality, and the right to self-determination. Our aim is to live as sons and daughters of God in our homeland, without barriers, walls, military occupation, and apartheid, but in a world in which justice, fairness, and equality rule. We envision a future in which our world is free of war, death, sectarianism, and tribalism, where the world of truth rises above the word of power, where legitimacy belongs to peace and justice. We draw our hope from the word of God and from the faith alive in our hearts, refusing to leave the shaping of the future and the voices of extremism, colonialism, and supremacy. We reaffirm our rejection of a religious state, for it constricts the state within narrow confines, favours one citizen over another, and excludes and discriminates amongst its people. Our hope is for a civil democratic state grounded in a culture of pluralism, not numerical dominance, that recognises the goodness and worth of every person who belongs to this land. Such a culture, rooted in the commandment of love, obliges us to confront every form of extremism and racism in our land, rich as it is in its diversity of its peoples, cultures, and religions, on the basis of equality before the law and full citizenship. From the heart of pain, genocide, and displacement, we raise this cry, a prophetic cry of steadfastness. We declare our commitment to work for the good of this land and for all humanity on the basis of shared humanity until the day we live free in our land together with all inhabitants of the land in true peace and reconciliation founded on the justice and equality of all God's creations, where mercy and truth meet and righteousness and peace kiss each other. So, that's the whole thing. It's, I stumbled over that a few times because there's quite a lot of it. But by God, I don't think that can be put better. I think that's a very sensible... Oh, sorry. I had to just move myself for a moment. A very sensible and very moving I don't know what the word is, moving statement about the situation in Gaza. And so, how do Zionists respond to this? Well, they trash it, or attempt to anyway. So this is coming from the Middle East Monitor, which is where I actually saw this, though recently I've seen it in a few other places. So just to give you a bit of context as to where this is coming from and why this has been brought up, the General Synod, the the Church of England's legislative body is due to consider this motion at its annual gathering in York. The motion does not ask the Church to endorse this document, but to receive and engage with it as part of its understanding of the Palestinian Christian experience amid Israel's genocide in Gaza. And Kyrios 2 was issued by Kyrios Palestine, the Palestinian Christian initiative, on the 11th of November 2025. And so that's giving you a little bit of context. So this has not even been, the Church has not even been asked to fully, completely endorse it. It's just kind of up for consideration, essentially. And so let's get into one. So Chief Rabbi Sir Mephram Miravis, who has a son serving in the Israeli army, so he's got one family member who's probably killing Palestinians, has warned the Church of England's General Synod that it risks damning Christian-Jewish relations if it proceeds with a motion encouraging engagement of this particular document. And according to a report in the Telegraph, Mervis described Kyrios 2 as deeply concerning and said he hoped the Synod would see it for what it is. And what he's of course implying is that the Palestinian Christian Initiative has misrepresented the suffering of Palestinians by framing it in a way that speaks the truth, essentially. He argued this can only harm the cause of peace. No, Mr. Rabbi, genocide harms the cause of peace. Bombing people into oblivion harms the cause of peace. A government encouraging settlers to attack people and evict them from the land harms the cause of peace. And he suggested that the document was reduced to what he called a complex political and historical reality, to a one-sided account, which downplayed the Jewish historical experience and presented political activism dressed up as theology. And to kind of go into this a bit further, Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Romain, the convener of the Rabbinic Court of Great Britain, also urged the Church to withdraw the document in the Telegraph again because, well, this is anecdotal, but I have heard that the Telegraph quite literally asks you if you are favourable to Zionism in Israel, and if you say no, you're not hired by them. And that is something I have heard from someone who applied for like a very minor role there, and I believe I've also seen a news article about it as well. He said it uses highly questionable descriptions describing Israel as colonial, when Jewish sovereignty dates back to political times, invalidates its authenticity. No, it doesn't. It is a colonial project. Israel is just using the kind of colonialism that America has used, that Britain has used, that a gazillion other European or other historical empires have used, by using technological power, military technological power, to kill and forcibly remove an indigenous people from the land. It's been done time and time again throughout history. And what they also says, which takes some cheek, is this: by all means, let the Synod debate the tragic events in the area, but using a much more balanced and realistic document. In the meantime, this one should be withdrawn, Remain added. So it's what he essentially is saying here. You can debate it, I guess, but think of our feelings. Our soldiers are very distressed when we bomb villages. They feel so bad about it, So consider our feelings and just remove this. Don't listen to the people that are actually suffering. Don't listen to the people that are actually on the ground, on the receiving end of this violence, which of course none of these people are. The people that are criticising this document are. None of them are suffering particularly. So, and another one as well. So Rabbi Charlie Bagzinski, the co-leader of the Movement for Progressive Judaism and the president of the Council of Christians and Jews, said the Church of England has absolute prerogative to discuss the suffering of Palestinian Christians, but questioned whether Kerios provided the right tools to which to have the discussion. So again, basically saying, well, you can debate it, I guess, but, you know, a report which is highly critical of Zionism and the state of Israel is not the right one. It's kind of an old saying of, it's kind of the old thing of, well, you can do this, but... And the campaign against anti-Semitism just outright attacked the document. A spokesperson said, this document is appalling and it is shocking that the Synod is even entertaining it. I've got bad news for you. The campaign against anti-Semitism, it's the truth. It comes straight from the horse's mouth. And the Board of Deputies of British Jews said that any church that wants a credible role in tackling prejudice here or advocating for peace in the Middle East should reject Kerios too. The board described the document as replete with historical distortions and false allegations that implicate Jews everywhere, which is just an outright lie. No, they didn't. And as we went through the document, they very clearly said, we are not accusing the whole Jewish people of this. The document, excuse me, quite literally said, not all Jews are Zionists, and not all Zionists are Jews. And indeed, they actually had compliments for the many Jewish voices that are speaking up against Zionism and the oppression that they're doing. It then goes on to say, this document erases and distorts Jewish identity and Jewish historical experience and risks real harms to Jews in the UK through its dissemination. No, it doesn't. The backlash comes, there is additional backlash is coming from this because the Methodist Church formally accepted Kerios II's texts and said to study the materials based on the contents, and said, you know, sorry, I'm a bit stumbling over my words here, but basically the Methodist Church has accepted this text and is studying the materials and its contents and saying, hey, let's put this out there into the community. I'm looking at my notes for this. It doesn't say which particular Methodist church it is, because there's actually quite a few different Methodist church, but one of them did anyway. And just to give a bit more context to this, the proposal came before the Church of England. The proposal before the Church of England came from a local diocese through the Church's democratic process. The Venerable Stuart Fife, the Archdeacon of West Cumberland, who tabled the motion, said, "We were very careful not to use the words genocide or apartheid. We have not made a judgment on that, though that is actually happening, but okay. We're saying let's at least read the documents, let's hear what they are saying, and let's seek an understanding." And Fife went on to say that the motion asked the Synod to receive the documents as a heartfelt expression of the lived experience of the Palestinian Church, and explaining that it obviously includes the concerns of the Jewish as well as the Palestinian population. So, just to add a little bit of an extra note on this, Archbishop Attila Hanna, the Greek Orthodox Archbishop of Sebastia, has warned the escalating and systematic Israeli attacks against Christians in Jerusalem and across Palestine. Separate figures from the Religious Freedom Data Center have documented dozens of attacks on Christians, most of them in occupied Jerusalem. So, just to kind of summarize, because this is a long video, but I thought it was worth laying out all the facts in the document, because actually the document in of itself pretty much lays out everything you need to know. Everything you need to know about Israel and Palestine is in that document, and it's coming from the Palestinians themselves. Now, obviously, because it's coming from the Palestinian Christian Church, there's a bit more of a focus on them, but it also talks quite a lot about the general suffering of all the Palestinian people, irrespective of what their faith is. And I think that when it comes to the criticism against it that I just kind of outlined, it just goes to show you cannot criticize Zionism in a way in which Zionists will ever describe as acceptable. Because for them, no criticism of any kind is acceptable. It just isn't. I mean, the document that we read out is very reasonable and lays out just the brutal facts, the outright brutal facts of what is happening and what has happened in Gaza. And here you have these people just saying, yeah, don't believe it. Don't believe it. It's anti-Semitic. It's inaccurate. Despite the fact that all of these people who are criticising it, they're not on the receiving end of Israeli bombs, of Israeli guns. What do they know about the suffering that these Palestinian people are going through? They know nothing about it because it's not happening to them. So it's very easy for them to completely dismiss it. But anyway, thank you very much for putting up with me for this really long video, and I will catch you all. Oh God, has this nearly been an hour? Fuck. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to this video today, and I will catch you later. So, bye-bye.